Even though it didn't fare well at the box office in 1990, the Jacob's Ladder ending has helped it endure as a cult classic that leads audiences on a dark and puzzling note. Falling into multiple genres, Jacob's Ladder is essentially a psychological horror that deals with the trauma of Jacob Singer, a Vietnam War veteran who seems to have his personal tragedies and hallucinatory visions both before and after the conflict. With Adrian Lyne's directorial feature blurring the lines between Jacob's past and present, the narrative can be a little difficult to follow for even the most attentive of viewers. With so many themes to interpret, Jacob's Ladder is one of the trippiest horror movies that is worth revisiting. It is the type of movie where audiences might feel as though they have a grasp on what is happening, but it still leaves room for a lot of questions. With Jacob experiencing wartime PTSD and struggling in the aftermath of his son's death, it is worth wondering what reality Jacob was actually living, or dying in. Throughout the film, Jacob is convinced that he is either going to die or has already died and gone to hell. The latter was a hallucinogenic drug used on soldiers to increase their anger. The revelation links to stories of experiments on soldiers. Michael Newman looking sideways and actual footage of Operation Delirium. The Vietnam setting of Jacob's Ladder is apparent from the start with the film opening in 1971. Unlike other Vietnam War movies, it doesn't just focus on the conflict-related trauma of American soldiers but also how their own government betrays them. As military chemist Michael Newman reveals to Jacob towards the end, the government had tasked him with experimenting on a hallucinogenic drug called the Ladder to increase the troops' aggression on the battlefield. Without their knowledge, Jacob's platoon was also dosed with this drug, leading to a homicidal frenzy that turned the soldiers against each other. It becomes clear that this drug-fueled bloodshed is what was hinted at early in the film, misleading viewers to think it's just the enemy forces attacking Jacob and his colleagues. Jacob's Ladder's drug elements become largely relevant in the context of American history given how the government has been alleged to have conducted such secret experiments. For instance, the CIA's Project MKUltra caused lethal delirium among soldiers. Even the film's ending note mentions the drug BZ that it claims the American government reportedly tested on its soldiers but denied the allegations, via Seattle Times. Such real-world consequences for actual soldiers only end up making the story more realistic and tragic. Jacob succumbs to his injuries and dies at the end of Jacob's Ladder. Jacob's death leaves questions about the reality in the movie. Tim Robbins as Jacob dies in Jacob's Ladder. It is established in the very final scene that despite putting up quite a fight to survive, Jacob couldn't survive the attack by his own forces in 1971. With the character finally dead, it is left for the viewers to interpret whether the other events outside Vietnam actually happened or were just a part of a terrible psychedelic nightmare caused by the latter. Be it Dave Boyle in Mystic River or Andy Dufresne in The Shawshank Redemption, Tim Robbins has played many a troubled protagonist. Jacob is in the conversation for his most tragic performance, but as he dies in the end, some may release a sigh of relief given that he is finally at peace now. What was real in Jacob's Ladder? Jacob imagined his life after the war while dying. It is highly likely that the lizard people that Jacob encounters are merely figments of his imagination, triggered to a demonic level by the forced intake of military-prescribed drugs. Convinced that he is in hell, Jacob mistakes these hallucinatory creations of his mind as actual devils. Given that he dies in 1971, it is highly likely that most of the post-Vietnam War events were merely a dream given that these nightmarish settings unfurled in 1975.